Most people imagine a stroke as something sudden, like a switch flipping inside the brain without warning. But in some cases, the body may begin whispering long before the emergency arrives. Sometimes hours earlier, sometimes even the day before, and that is what makes stroke warning signs so dangerous. They often do not look dramatic at first. Just a strange wave of fatigue, a moment of dizziness, a headache that feels different, trouble finding simple words, a sudden feeling that something is off, even if you cannot explain why. Then the feeling fades, so people ignore it. But this is the part many people miss. A stroke is not always only about one blocked blood vessel. It may reflect years of silent pressure building inside the body. High blood pressure, damaged circulation, chronic stress, poor sleep, smoking, diabetes, inflammation slowly affecting the brain over time. The important question is not whether every strange symptom means a stroke. Most do not. The real question is this: is your body suddenly behaving differently in a way that should not be ignored? And some of the most overlooked warning signs are not painful at all. A person may suddenly struggle to think clearly. They may forget simple information, lose track of a conversation, pause in the middle of a sentence because the words no longer come naturally. Sometimes, family members notice it first. The smile looks uneven. One eyelid droops slightly. One side of the face feels numb, heavy, disconnected. And the strange part is how subtle it can look in the beginning. A person may still walk, still talk, still believe everything is fine, but the brain may already be struggling, because the brain does not always scream for help. Sometimes it whispers. Another warning sign may appear in the arms or legs. A sudden weakness, numb fingers, dropping objects for no reason. One leg feeling unstable while walking. And this is where circulation and brain signaling become deeply connected. The brain depends on constant blood flow. Every thought, every movement, every word relies on oxygen reaching brain cells at the right moment. If that flow becomes disrupted, even briefly, the signals inside the brain may begin to break apart. And sometimes, before a major stroke happens, the body may experience a temporary warning event, called a TIA, often known as a mini-stroke. The symptoms may disappear quickly, but the warning should never be ignored. Now here is another hidden signal people often dismiss: sudden dizziness, loss of balance, feeling unstable while walking, a sensation that the room is spinning for no clear reason, especially when it appears together with weakness. Speech changes, numbness or blurred vision, and vision changes may be one of the strangest warnings of all. Some people suddenly lose part of their vision. Others describe blurry sight, double vision, or a shadow moving across one eye like a curtain. The frightening part is that these episodes may only last a few minutes, just long enough for someone to say, "I am probably just tired." But the body often reacts before a major event fully develops. Another possible warning sign is a sudden severe headache that feels completely different from normal headaches. Not every headache is dangerous. Most are not. But when a sudden headache appears together with confusion, weakness, speech problems, or balance changes, the situation may be far more serious than people realize. And this is why pattern recognition matters more than panic. A stroke does not always begin like a movie scene. Sometimes it begins quietly, during dinner, at the grocery store, while texting, while walking through the hallway at home. A missed word, a shaky step, a brief moment of confusion, then normal again. And because the symptoms improve, many people wait too long to seek help. But timing matters, because brain tissue depends heavily on oxygen-rich blood flow. And in some cases, faster medical treatment may help reduce long-term damage. This is why health experts often emphasize fast face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call emergency services. Not tomorrow, not after resting, not after searching symptoms online for 3 hours. Time matters. And perhaps the most important thing to understand is this: the body often whispers before it screams. Small neurological changes may appear briefly before a major event develops. But modern life trains people to normalize exhaustion, stress, headaches, brain fog, and poor sleep until dangerous symptoms blend into everyday life. That is why awareness matters. Not fear, awareness. Because recognizing sudden changes in speech, balance, vision, strength, coordination, or facial movement may help someone react faster when every minute counts. And while no video can diagnose a medical condition, understanding possible warning signs may help people take those signals more seriously instead of dismissing them as nothing. Because sometimes the body tries to warn us before something life-changing happens. And learning to notice those warnings may help protect the future that depends on them. But the story does not end with the warning signs themselves. Because many strokes are connected to patterns that quietly shape the body for years before symptoms ever appear. High blood pressure may slowly place stress on delicate blood vessels inside the brain. Diabetes may affect circulation and damage vascular health over time. Smoking may weaken blood vessel walls. Poor sleep may disrupt blood pressure regulation and recovery inside the nervous system. Chronic stress may silently affect inflammation, hormones, and cardiovascular function day after day. And the dangerous part is that much of this damage can happen quietly. A person may feel completely normal, while the body is already under strain beneath the surface. That is why strokes sometimes seem to happen out of nowhere. But in reality, the body may have been struggling silently for years. And lifestyle patterns matter more than many people realize. Long periods of sitting, very little movement, highly processed diets, heavy alcohol intake, untreated sleep apnea, constant stress without recovery. None of these habits guarantee a stroke, but over time, they may place additional pressure on the vascular system and the brain. And this is the part many people misunderstand. Stroke prevention is usually not about one miracle food, one magical supplement, or one secret health trick. It is often about reducing repeated stress on the body over time. Walking regularly may support healthy circulation. Managing blood pressure may help reduce strain on blood vessels. Getting enough sleep may support brain recovery and vascular regulation. Balanced eating patterns rich in fiber, vegetables, healthy fats, and protein may help support metabolic and cardiovascular health. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. Because the body responds more to repeated signals than occasional effort. And there is another emotional reality people rarely talk about. Many stroke survivors later remember the earlier warnings very clearly. The strange headache they ignored, the moment they lost balance, the conversation where words suddenly felt difficult, the numbness that disappeared after a few minutes. At the time, it did not seem serious enough, and that is deeply human. People are busy, tired, distracted, conditioned to push through discomfort. But sudden neurological changes should never be casually ignored. Not every symptom is dangerous. Most are not. But when multiple symptoms appear together suddenly, especially changes involving speech, balance, weakness, numbness, confusion, or vision, the body may be signaling something far more serious. And this is why awareness can genuinely matter. Not because awareness prevents every stroke. It does not. But because recognizing warning signs earlier may increase the chance that someone seeks medical attention before more severe damage occurs. The goal is not panic. The goal is attention. Attention to patterns. Attention to sudden change. Attention to signals the body may be sending before a crisis fully develops. Because sometimes the body whispers first, and learning to listen to those whispers may one day protect a life. And perhaps the most important lesson is this: the body does not always communicate through pain. Sometimes it communicates through interruption, a sentence that suddenly becomes difficult to finish, a hand that no longer feels steady, a moment of confusion that makes no sense, a strange heaviness in one side of the body, a sudden loss of balance that disappears almost as quickly as it came. Small interruptions, quiet disruptions, signals many people explain away as stress, aging, exhaustion, or just one of those days. But the brain depends on precision. Every movement, every memory, every word, every emotion depends on billions of signals moving through delicate networks inside the body every second. And when blood flow is disrupted, even briefly, those systems may begin to fail in subtle ways before a major emergency appears. That is why the body may whisper before it screams. And this does not mean living in fear of every headache or dizzy spell. That is not the message. The message is awareness. Awareness of sudden change. Awareness of unusual neurological symptoms. Awareness that combinations of symptoms may matter more than isolated discomfort. Because the earlier people recognize something is wrong, the faster they may seek help. And when it comes to stroke, minutes can matter. Not every outcome can be controlled. Not every stroke can be prevented. But understanding the signals may help people respond faster, instead of waiting for symptoms to become impossible to ignore. And sometimes that difference may change everything. So pay attention to the patterns your body sends, especially sudden changes involving speech, balance, coordination, weakness, numbness, facial movement, or vision. Do not panic, but do not ignore them either. Because protecting the brain is not only about reacting to emergencies, it is also about listening carefully before the emergency arrives. And sometimes, the day before a stroke may not look dramatic at all. It may look like an ordinary moment, with a warning hidden inside it. Because the truth is, many life-changing moments begin quietly. Not with chaos, not with collapse, not with something obvious enough for everyone around us to immediately understand. Sometimes it begins with hesitation, a word that disappears halfway through a sentence, a strange numb feeling in the fingertips, a sudden wave of dizziness while standing still, a brief moment where the world feels slightly disconnected, even if only for a few seconds. And then life continues. People go back to work, back to dinner, back to scrolling on their phones, back to believing the body will always keep functioning the way it did yesterday. But the body remembers everything. It remembers years of pressure inside the blood vessels, years of stress without recovery, years of poor sleep, smoking, inflammation, high blood pressure, slowly damaging delicate arteries inside the brain, one silent moment at a time. And eventually, the body may begin asking for attention before it asks for help. That is why awareness matters so deeply, not to create fear, but to create presence. Presence with your health. Presence with the signals your body sends every day. Presence with the subtle changes that do not feel normal, even if they seem small. Because small changes can carry important meaning. And sometimes the people around us notice those changes first. A family member hearing unusual speech. A friend noticing facial asymmetry. Someone asking, "Are you okay?" After watching you suddenly lose balance or struggle to respond clearly. Those moments matter, and responding quickly may matter even more. Because when blood flow to the brain becomes interrupted, time is incredibly important. Brain cells depend constantly on oxygen and circulation to survive. And the longer the interruption continues, the greater the risk that damage becomes more severe. That is why waiting can become dangerous. Waiting for tomorrow. Waiting to see if it passes. Waiting because the symptoms seem embarrassing, confusing, or temporary. But temporary symptoms do not always mean temporary risk. Sometimes a brief warning is exactly that. A warning. And perhaps one of the most powerful forms of prevention is simply refusing to ignore what feels suddenly different. Not obsessively, not fearfully, but honestly. Listening carefully when the body behaves in unfamiliar ways. Especially when changes involve movement, speech, coordination, balance, memory, or vision. Because health is often protected long before emergencies happen. It is protected through awareness, through action, through paying attention while there is still time to respond. And maybe that is the real message hidden inside all of this. The body is not trying to betray us. Often it is trying to communicate with us. Quietly, repeatedly, patiently. The question is whether we are listening closely enough to hear it, and in many ways, modern life makes this even harder. People are exhausted, distracted, overstimulated every hour of the day. So when the body sends subtle warning signs, many people push through them automatically. They blame stress, lack of sleep, too much work, too much caffeine, getting older, and sometimes they are right. But not always. Because the difference between an ordinary symptom and a dangerous one is often not intensity. It is sudden change, a sudden inability to speak clearly, a sudden weakness in one side of the body, a sudden change in coordination, a sudden confusion that feels strange and unfamiliar. The body notices these changes immediately, even when the mind tries to rationalize them away. And this is why self-awareness can become a form of protection. Not fear-based awareness, not anxiety, not constantly searching for illness, but calm awareness. The kind that notices when something feels deeply different from your normal baseline. Because early action may create possibilities that delayed action cannot. And sometimes the most important decision happens in the smallest moment. The decision to take symptoms seriously. The decision to ask for help. The decision to call emergency services instead of waiting alone in silence. Those moments may not look dramatic from the outside, but they can change the future completely. And there is another truth people rarely think about. Stroke does not only affect one moment, it can affect memory, speech, movement, independence, relationships, the ability to do ordinary things people once took for granted. That is why prevention matters. That is why awareness matters. That is why recognizing warning signs matters. Not because people should live in fear of the future, but because the brain is worth protecting. Every memory you love, every conversation, every movement, every dream for the future, depends on that extraordinary network inside your head continuing to function properly. And perhaps that is why the smallest warning signs deserve attention. Because the brain often protects us silently every second of our lives. Until one day, it struggles silently too. So take care of your circulation. Take care of your sleep. Take care of your stress levels, your blood pressure, your movement, your long-term habits. Not perfectly, just consistently. Because health is rarely built in one single day. And damage rarely appears in one single day either. The body responds to patterns, and sometimes, changing those patterns early may matter more than people realize. So if something suddenly feels wrong, especially involving speech, balance, weakness, numbness, confusion, coordination, or vision, do not ignore it. Because listening to the body early may one day protect everything that comes after. Because in the end, a stroke is not only a medical event, it is a reminder of how deeply connected the body truly is. The heart, the blood vessels, the nervous system, the brain. All working together, every second to keep a human life moving forward, and most of the time people never think about that miracle. They wake up, walk, speak, laugh, drive to work, send messages, recognize the faces they love, without realizing how much silent coordination is happening underneath every ordinary moment, until something interrupts it, and that interruption can arrive quietly, not always as collapse, sometimes as hesitation, sometimes as confusion, sometimes as imbalance, sometimes as a sentence that suddenly feels impossible to finish. That is why paying attention matters. Not because awareness guarantees safety, but because awareness creates opportunity. Opportunity to act earlier. Opportunity to seek medical attention sooner. Opportunity to protect brain tissue before more damage occurs. And for some people, those extra minutes may become the difference between recovery and permanent loss. This is also why conversations about stroke should never belong only to hospitals or medical professionals. Families should understand the warning signs. Friends should understand them. Caregivers should understand them. Even young adults should understand them. Because emergencies do not always happen in expected places. They happen at dinner tables, in grocery stores, at work, in bedrooms late at night, during ordinary conversations on completely ordinary days. And sometimes the people nearby become the reason someone receives help in time. A spouse noticing slurred speech, a child recognizing facial drooping, a coworker seeing sudden confusion. Awareness spreads protection from one person to another. And perhaps that is one of the most important things to remember. You do not need to become afraid of your body. Your body is not the enemy. In many cases, it is trying to warn you, trying to adapt, trying to survive, trying to communicate before something more serious happens. The goal is not panic. The goal is respect. Respect for the signals. Respect for sudden change. Respect for the brain and the extraordinary systems that keep human life functioning every moment of every day. And maybe, the next time you notice something that feels suddenly different, you will pause long enough to listen instead of dismissing it immediately. Because sometimes the warning signs people ignore for only a few minutes become the warning signs they never forget afterward. And sometimes the smallest moment of awareness can protect an entire future.